I'm good.
Happy Friday. Hello, everyone, and thank you once again for tuning in to the Property XPerts Podcast and live at 5 on YouTube and across all platforms. If you've watched or followed us before, welcome back. And if you haven't, Ben and I have set up multi 6, 7, and 8-figure turnover businesses from scratch. And on this podcast, we share the highs, lows, and indifference. And one thing I would actually ask the listeners to do today is could you just comment on what platform or what website you're following this live on, just so we can see where you guys are watching from. So LinkedIn, YouTube, just comment that in. That would be super useful. And of course, we always answer questions anyway, so we'll get the ball rolling on that. So without further ado, a little bit on the agenda, and then we'll dive straight in. So it's the 7th of June for the podcast listeners, and the jam-packed episode, as always, with some golden nuggets at the end about setting up businesses if you are setting up a company. So avatars for marketing, we'll be talking about our marketing strategy and our avatars. Section number 2 is around REVIT and inbuilt costings, and that's all around surveying stuff that we're delivering that may go through to design. So Ben will be sharing about that. Sensitivity analysis for values for residential and commercial property. So we will share how you value a commercial property and how to stress test that, because everyone's saying the office market is dead, but there is a price where everything has a value. So we'll be sharing about how we've tried to de-risk projects that we're looking at that might have an office element to them, whether we like it or not. Introducing to new team members at XP Surveys, loss-making property development deal. I think that's probably the biggest, most exciting one of the episodes. So make sure you hang around for that and what the loss-making property development deal is all about. We'll be talking about the collaboration of AURA Homes and XP Property and how that dynamic works and how that's progressed, well, since inception, really. The 3 must-dos when setting up a business. All the time I see 2 of these 3 getting done, but the last one not getting done. And it actually caught Ben and I with our trousers down, and we had to very quickly get a new pair of trousers and do them up properly. Geo-business expo in London for all you techies out there. Ben will be sharing a little bit about the tech that you missed out on this week, but sharing details for you to attend next time. And then, as always, any question answered, and see if you can ask a question that we can't answer. And that's the agenda this week.
Very good. Welcome, everyone.
Well, so you like that one.
The trousers down thing was a good intro. Avatars for marketing, point number 1. I mean, I think this is one you wanted to speak mainly about, so I'll let you do the most of the talking, then I'll chip in with my comments.
Yeah, so without spoiling, we had our boardroom session this week in XP on Wednesday, and it's always a recurring conversation that we have within our group. Do you do marketing? Do you go on social medias? Do you embarrass yourself and do all of those? You know, you got to boost your confidence up, video it, delete it because you don't like it, then record it again, and then start over again because you muttered, and get this perfect, marketing out there. And within our boardroom, there was one of our I suppose our mentees or boardroom people that was, do I do it or do I not? Do I need it? Do I not? And there's constantly like a seesaw balance of how people view before they go into their marketing strategy. It's really important to build your marketing strategy, but the most important thing before you have a marketing strategy is actually who do you want to be communicating with? Because marketing is communication, and you want to be thinking, who do I need? So every business has a need. Some businesses don't need to do that much marketing. That might be, I've heard of exclusive clubs in London that you don't even know about them because they're invite only from a referral. That's a very different marketing plan from a referral business than maybe splashing it out there in paid ads on the back of the newspaper. And that's a different type of marketing. So it's all about understanding who you want to be communicating with. And that might be your target client. That might be for us, our avatar. An avatar is, another term really for a target client, but our avatars are predominantly investors. The main thing we need to leave as XP Property, our office for, is funds. So our avatar in that instance is investors, whereas AURA, it might be homeowners. As XP Surveys, it might be architects. So everyone has an avatar. And once you understand who they are, you can start to think about what they consume. So that's what mediums, so LinkedIn, newspapers, articles, events, talks, podcasts, then you can start to think where they consume that, when they consume that, which is timing, and how they like to receive information. So, for an example, the Prime drink that the guys brought out, Logan Paul, he probably got most of his marketing from TikTok because his target client is obviously kids between the age of 10 and maybe 30 years old, and he wants to hit them on their platforms that they spend their time consuming on. And that's a good example of that. I thought that'd be relative to share, because a lot of people have a marketing strategy because they look at another development company or they look at another business and just copy what they do, when what you should be thinking of is who do you want to be communicating with? And that is super, super important. And the more you think about that, the more you can orchestrate a plan that actually enables you to see the fruits of the labor of the marketing that goes into it. Anything to add about?
I agree with all of that. I think marketing is a massive field. There's so much to think about when we get our mentees in the room, and a lot of the time we go through the 5 segments of every business. So sales, marketing, operations, finance, and talent. And from a marketing perspective, there's a lot of people that just either they haven't started or they don't know where to start. And the first question we generally ask is, do you need to start? Because there are some people that don't need to splash what they're doing all over social media. What we sort of established this week for some of our mentees is that they don't necessarily want to or need to build a presence across social media and drive, be posting every day and doing videos and reels on site and all this sort of stuff. But what we established was that they will need some sort of shop window. And we've got Sam Lowney in our group from Merry Oaks Finance, and he knows. And we also had somebody from Oak North, a very large bank. They've got, what is it, 1 billion in loans out there at the moment?
2 billion debt book is what they're aiming to lend this year. They're currently at 1.4, which I think was a slightly slower book because of the back end of COVID.
Yeah, which is mad. But both Mark and Sam said, look, when they get an inquiry through for a new loan, they will search you on Google. So at least have a shop window, which is in this day and age a website that at least has a little bit about who you are, what you do, even if you don't have the big social presence and the online footprint that maybe for the likes of us that we have, for example. But it's horses for courses. If you're not looking to get your message out there and target specific people like we are in terms of investment, you're just looking for to do what you do as a developer. You're not looking to shout about it. You've got what you need in terms of investment. Then just having a website is a good place to start. And then if you're looking to grow like we are, then getting your message out there is only going to bring opportunity and investment your way. So horses for courses, but do think about your avatar client and what they are going to be looking at and consuming, like Jack says. Cool. Anything else you want to say?
No, that's all good. I will tell the story that I did tell in our boardroom. So I know a developer back, a couple of generations older than us, and his marketing plan is to meet people down the pub. And it can be as simple as that. He has a local pub that he goes to, and one of his investors he met in that pub, and his marketing strategy is to meet this investor from time to time down that local pub. So all of this is feeding off, who you're trying to target and communicate with. And events can be part of that, but I just thought that would be, because it kind of, you do get swallowed up. I did a marketing degree and we learned about Coca-Cola campaigns, Diageo campaigns, and it's all very corporate and very sort of, but if you follow James Sinclair or some of the stuff that we do hiring a business development manager, some of the old school tactics of I suppose marketing do still work, flyering and things like that. They do still have effects. And I was actually chatting to a local estate agent saying, do you flyer local houses that have already been on the market for over 5 months? And he was like, no, I never even thought of that, because they just rely on that Rightmove or inbound website leads. And sometimes the old school can be just as effective, if not more effective, depending on the business.
That surprises me, because I seem to get like 2 or 3 estate agents every day post something saying, have you thought about selling your property? Blah, 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 blah. Seems to be everywhere.
I can tell you where that conversation goes. You go, oh, we could sell. And then Laura goes, no, we're not selling.
Normally what happens is the letter just goes straight into the bin. She'd sell tomorrow if we could move. she's keen to get out. But anyway, that's another story. Dan Borg, thank you very much for typing in YouTube. You're clearly watching on YouTube and you're typing in YouTube into the comments, which is great. Lets us know where you're tuning in from. So anyone else that's tuning in, please do let us know down in the comments below where you are tuning in from. Cool. On to point number 2. And this is something that we've recently been testing. And I think it's endless, the level of detail that we can go into. And for those who are in the design space, the architecture, the construction space, there's no way you wouldn't have seen BIM, which is Building Information Modeling. Over the last 10 years, it's been becoming more and more inbuilt in the whole design process and system. And we're trying to integrate a little bit of that within AURA. So we've transitioned over the last couple of years to predominantly build our models in REVIT, which is a 3D modeling package, for architecture and for property. So what we used to use was a program called AutoCAD, which is very, very old, but very, very 2D. Everything's just basically loads of different lines, and you as the architect pull those lines together to create a picture and a plan and elevations, etc. With Revit, what you're doing is building the model itself, and then you're creating your 2D plans out of that. So you're cutting sections across the floor to give you floor plans, cutting sections through the building to get your sections. You've got your elevations, all elevations based on that 3D model that you've already created. Now, BIM is the next step further, where all of the elements within that 3D, BIM's very, very wide, but for the purpose of this conversation, the BIM processes that I'm talking about is the elemental parts of that 3D model have properties. So instead of it just being lines on a piece of paper, what really is happening is that you've got a 300 mil wide line on the drawing, which is an external wall, but that wall has parameters. So you can tell that wall that it's an internal block skin, an external brick skin, and then it's got a cavity and insulation in between. So what we've done in our Revit model, and we're setting this up as a template, so most of our projects can be run very, very quickly. Each of those elements, i.e. the external walls, the windows, the roof build-ups, the floor build-ups, we are giving it a costing. So we've worked, we've had lots of costings back over the last 6 months. We've taken what we think is sort of the most appropriate costing from each of those tender returns, and we are giving each elemental section within the 3D model a cost. So we know that per meter squared of brickwork, it will have a cost of X. If we know what the brickwork is, the blockwork is, the insulation is, we can then put a full meter squared rate to the external wall. Now, in the model, once we've built that model with all of the floor build-ups, the roof build-ups, the wall build-ups, everything, when that model is complete, we can run off a schedule of what the costs are for those elements. So instead of basically sending the drawing package out to a QS, because the QS, all they're going to do is take off the quantities. So they're going to do a manual entry of measuring floors and walls and linear meter and square meters of roof areas, etc. They're going to allocate a cost to that element and then sum up the total of that. Now, what we're doing with Revit is giving it an inbuilt cost breakdown, cost analysis, and the spreadsheet that you can see on screen is an example of that. So if I just read out what I've got there, we've got the length of the wall is 3 meters, it's 3 meters high, therefore it's 9 meters squared. The estimated cost per square meter for this fully filled cavity brickwork wall is just under £400 per square meter, giving a cost of 3,600 quid to build that wall. And that is basically all spat out of that 3D model, which we've done, added some clever, BIM efficiencies in the background to give us that output very, very quickly. So once we've designed something, we can very, very quickly get a, I would say probably within 10% plus or minus accurate cost of what the cost of building that property will be. Now, I'll caveat that with, obviously, the kitchen's going to be an extra cost, the bathroom fittings. This is mainly like a building cost, and if you're opening structural openings, we can't have a cost from that. But from a materials perspective, we're going to very quickly do 80% of a QS's work within the 3D model that we're creating. So it's got loads of opportunities here. It's going to speed up and give information far faster. It's certainly going to help XP Property because we're going to know a lot faster where our budgets need to be, even at the planning permission stage, because these costings are likely to be inbuilt from the start during that planning permission stage. So we're going to get better and better at narrowing down our costs earlier and earlier in the process, which, as we discussed in our non-exec director meeting today, is a massive risk in any development that you undertake. So if you're interested in kind of working with AURA from an architectural perspective, these are the types of R&D things that we're doing to try and improve our system and give extra value to clients and developers that we work with, and it's going to benefit us as XP Property as well. Does that all make sense, Jack?
Yeah, it makes perfect sense. And I was just actually going to compare this to what would currently be used. So I know a lot of builders out there that would actually instruct a quantity surveyor that would have their own software that would input all of the sizes onto a software that would then spit out a cost subject to the cost of the weight or the meterage or the cubic meterage or whatever it may be. But this is completely live to the drawings, the accurate drawings. So you're not going back to a QS, you're relying on tech. Which is, from a developer's perspective, is huge cost saving. So if you have a drawing iteration, you just update the tech and it.
Yeah, and obviously it relies on us inputting the costings, in an accurate way, and obviously every builder's gonna price things differently, but the way that we would have done it previously wouldn't have given us any information. So I say, we're probably going to be 10% plus or minus, depending on which builder you're using, what margins they're working on, and all that sort of stuff. And we will have to probably every quarter kind of go into our REVIT model data and maybe update the cost of installation, update the cost of, maybe use BCIS or other systems to kind of take costing data and add it to our model. But it's I think with AI integrations and plugins and all of this, this is just the way things are going to go. So we're trying to get a heads up and get ahead of the curve, I guess. Cool. Thanks, Alison, for tuning in from your home desk in Hornchurch on LinkedIn. Good to know. Anyone else that's tuning in, please do let us know in the comments below. We're sort of trying to get a gauge of where most people tune in from in a week, because we might do different things on different platforms, for example. Cool. Sensitivity analysis. That's one for you, definitely.
This sounds like a right geeky subject line, but it's really not. So this is stressing the values of commercial and residential property, but predominantly commercial. And I'm going to try and, as most succinctly and simply, explain how commercial buildings, for the people out there, followers out there, don't know how commercial buildings are valued. So residential buildings tend to be valued by supply and demand, so what the market's paying. And then an easy way to work that out is the pound per square foot values that warranted in that area, is a simple terms. So you look at local comparables and what they offered, if they offer similar things, what pound per square foot they went for. Now, commercial property is very different, because when people buy commercial property, they tend to be buying it on a yield. And what a yield is, and I actually told my fun fact a few episodes ago, yield comes from the terminology of what a farmer yields from a field. So it's how much crop you yield from a field. So for an example, if you bought £100,000 property and it was paying you £10,000 in rent, that's a 10% yield on your expenditure, essentially. Now, commercial property is kind of the rent that you achieve is then multiplied by the yield in the area. So let's say you are getting £10,000, but the property is in Newcastle. You might be buying a 20% yield. If the property is in Central Zone London, you might be getting a 5% yield, and the valuation is relative. So for a £10,000 income in London, that's 200k the property would be worth. And then if it was a 20% return, that's 60k. Quick maths. So you can see that the more desirable the location, the lower the yield, the higher the value, which is sometimes difficult to get your head around. And I hope I've explained that as best I can, but it makes sense. Now, we're looking at buildings that we convert and repurpose for residential use, and sometimes we have an element of commercial that we keep. And we're actually analysing quite a lot of projects at the moment. And with all the costs, the finance costs, the purchase costs, the development costs, the fixtures and fittings costs, which have increased since we've started our businesses. Some sites do actually work better if you keep it commercial and you don't convert the building. So we always do that cross analysis because there's two good reasons that we would do that. One, if we buy a building and fail to get planning, we got to kind of know what we're left with and what that materially means as a downside or a plan B. But also just to sort of see where the site sits at in terms of values, if we're overpaying for it, if we are left with an office space. And it's super difficult to get comfortable with these numbers at the moment because a lot of people are name shaming offices and saying the office market is dead. But we want to know, if we're buying a building, what that actually looks like in terms of the values that we're looking at. So we're bidding on a big office site at the moment, and it's difficult to get confident around what it would be worth as it is as an office, because the office market is less desirable. So the way that we have worked it out is on the column axis on the left, we have the likely pound per square foot value starting from almost, if you listed it today and put it out of this value, it would let tomorrow, like very bottom value, cheapest stock around for years. And then the top being hopefully an optimistic value in the sort of sliding scale all the way down. And then you model multiple percentages on a yield that you could achieve. So we think this building should let for around £25 per square foot and achieve around a 10% yield. So the way that we have tried to get comfortable with this scheme is to stress the pound per square foot down, even almost down to like £15 per square foot, and the yield value up to like 12%. And that way we know that if that eventuality happens and we fill the building and we sell the building and we still make the profit that we would like to see, then we're not massively overpaying for the building. So it's just drawing a likely spectrum, sort of softening and understanding the values around what is likely, because it's very difficult if you just have one value, and it's almost like pulling comparables together, which is super important. So we call that sensitivity analysis. Check if the pound per square foot values do continue to come down, what that looks like. Check if the yield values do tend to rise. So with interest rates rising and Liz Truss cocking up the market a little bit, and people having more expensive finance to borrow, in the yield that you're buying now has moved up 1% or 2% in the market. Generally, that's just generally speaking, because if you were borrowing money at 3% and buying a 6% yield, you were still making margin. Whereas today, the interest rates are above 6%, so you can't buy that stock anymore. So I hope that helps. It's just to broaden your horizons and understanding of the risk of a scheme. We do have stress testing models, which we can send you a template. If you just comment template or stress test, we can send you that, and we can actually send you this one as well. But this is very bespoke to a wider, broader range for commercial buildings.
Nice. Some big numbers in here. Which project's this?
I can't tell you that, Ben.
16 million GDV. Love a bit of that. Glad I know about it. Cool. Yeah, good stuff. Really interesting. Hopefully a lot of people found value in that. If you want to work with us sort of more closely, we actually had our XP Boardroom session on Wednesday this week. As a photo on the screen of the AURA office, and some new friendly faces within our boardroom group, which is great because it brings a different dynamic, new experience, new knowledge base, wider contact space for everyone to tap into, fresh sets of eyes, and interesting questions that come out from people that are at various different stages within their sort of property life. So if you're interested in getting one-to-one sort of consultancy with Jack and I, do email us at info@xpproperty.co.uk. And if you're interested in working with like-minded property developers in a sort of group setting, sort of mastermind setting, that's what our boardroom's all about. So we can hopefully help you grow your business and stop you making some of the mistakes that we did. Cool. And on to some of our wider businesses. We've been running XP surveys for about 3.5 years now. The team was at 4 people plus Jack and I as of last week. But Monday morning, we had 2 new members starting. So Andy, who's come in as a senior land surveyor, and Trevor, who's our new business development manager. It's been a real turn of events over the last couple of months with XP surveys. We're starting to see good profitability within the business. We're starting to hit the revenue targets that we set ourselves, and Trevor coming in as BDM will hopefully sort of skyrocket that and continue to grow that top line. with Andy helping to then deliver on those services and generate some good bottom line profit as well. But it's recruitment and hiring, I would say, is one of the most challenging and most difficult things within any business. You never really know whether you've got it right until a good couple of months into the new people starting. But it's we're super excited to have them on board. They've both got a real wealth of experience, both in the industry and in other industries as well, where hopefully they can bring some new ideas and fresh ideas into what we're currently doing and help make things a bit more efficient. But super excited to have them on board.
Do we have a special offer for our listeners to celebrate the joiners in XP surveys?
You know what? I almost forgot we do. We absolutely do. So we offer a speedy service, which is effectively, from an output perspective, we try to be one of the fastest in the industry anyway. Most people out there are turning things around from, being on site to actually delivering you the 2D plans in sometimes 3 weeks, which for us is just outrageous. We try to get everything done within 10 days. But for a typical 3 to 4 bedroom property, our speedy service, we can actually turn that around in 5 days. So if you're interested and you have instant demand to get somebody on site tomorrow with drawings back to you by Friday, because it's costing you a shitload of money on finance costs, and you need somebody out to survey the site, we've got that. We've got a discount, an offering where we're giving you the speedy service for free next week, because obviously we want to keep Andy busy. Do get in touch if you've got any immediate requirements for measured building, topographical, underground utilities, drainage surveys, drone surveys, or the likes, and we will certainly help you out. Cool. I'm intrigued about this one. I had a quick look at that breakdown of financials, Jack, before this. This topic is all about some loss-making property development deals, and Jack's going to run through an interesting article from one of our fellow developers.
Yeah, so I was reading the Property Investor News, which is an amazing magazine. We subscribe to it and receive it every month, and it's pulled together by Richard Bowser. I'm sure if you followed our journey for a little while, you've seen us be interviewed by him. Love Richard. He's very data driven. We've actually featured in Property Investor News, and what I actually really loved about featuring in Property Investor News is Richard said that I'm not posting anything in my magazine until you can actually prove you achieve those numbers, and this is true, and you are a real person. And that was actually eventuality, which I love, because there's a lot of guff and wind in our industry. So I really like how he takes a very serious approach. But anyway, there's an article in there called 2 Projects from Hell. And it's written by Richard and a guy called Emmanuel Ezike, who I've actually known for 7 or 8 years. Hugely reputable developer. He's got some serious experience under his belt. I think he's probably delivered dozens, maybe 50 plus developments in his career, and big ones as well. He develops in central London, so he doesn't hang around, and a really admirable guy, also a really down to earth guy. So huge shout out to Emmanuel, and love watching his stuff. He actually also appeared on what was that program where a rich family and a poor family swap homes, and he was obviously the rich family, which was interesting to watch. But anyway, this article. Yeah, I mean, this article is just real. And one of the reasons I wanted to bring this up is, fortunately, on last week, Friday, Ben and I and the team in Aparo picked up this award. And I did a post after the award, which was just quite real. Like, it's been a rocky journey over the last few years in that business specifically. And we've had to deal with a lot of firefighting, more than you would hope. When everything that you can't control goes wrong, is out of your control, but you've got to deal with it, and that is pretty painful and tough. And then coincidentally, Monday, this week, I picked up this magazine and read an article about Emmanuel losing money, or basically making no money, on a very large project because everything went wrong in it. And it's kind of nice to read it in a way. Obviously, I feel for him, and he obviously went through a lot of stress to go through that. But it's kind of nice in a way that we're all human. It's being a property developer is all about problem solving. In our business, we have a rule that there's always 3 solutions to any problem, and it's more about how you handle it rather than how you panic around it. And I feel that we've had to do that in our business. And I feel that this project that Emmanuel's, honestly sharing, is huge credit to him. And, that's a potential for a growing person. I think Emmanuel's in a different stage of his life and career for this. That's quite a potential, ego tarnishing article to produce. I have cocked up. It didn't go right. This is reality. And I just loved it. I love that from Richard and I love that from Emmanuel. It's not always blue skies and cream pies. So read the article, get the article. It's all about a project in Acton in West London. I actually knew of the previous owners of the scheme. Just to give you a bit of a snapshot of some of the reasons why it didn't make any money. They bought the site, for, I believe, let me just quickly have a look. I think it was about £1 million. Yeah, 1.365 million quid. They were supposed to spend 2 million on finance, delivery and fees and exit just over 4 million. So make about £1 million profit. The build and fees and finance ended up being all of their profit that they were proposed to make. So they made £0. And I kind of know that's probably, a few thousand plus or 3,000 below, whatever it may be. And that is the nature of some developments. And, it's all about risk management and focusing on what the potential downsides are. Ben mentioned about, the risks of build costs and being on top of those. And it's been super difficult. And Emmanuel was saying that the main reasons that the build and those costs were so significant was the actual planning and design that the previous owners had achieved wasn't really deliverable. The floor heights and structure wasn't really what they thought it was. They were building through COVID-19, so delays, inflationary measures on materials and supply demand problems. Supply chain demand problems. And all of these factored into basically a catalyst of this project not actually making money. It's a great article. It's real. People don't make, people that put it out there, on the socials and on social media, you always see the good stories. And I kind of feel that Ben and I get a lot of credit and kudos for always actually sharing it as it is. Stuff does go wrong. And I think promoting that in social media is great. And I love it. And I think that there should be a lot more of that, of being candid, because unfortunately, I've seen a lot of people follow on social medias and then go and make mistakes because they do believe it is a bit easier than a lot of people portray. It actually is. It's fucking hard. And if you're not learning and developing and listening to podcasts like these and others and connecting with other developers, you won't know that. So make sure you're working on your self-development as well as your own development. But I suppose and the reality.
I love the honesty and transparency of this, to be honest. Like you say, it isn't shown enough. And I've commented before about Homes Under the Hammer, and if you watch it, every single project they turn money. Every single project they make a profit, and the reason being that they don't include all of the associated fees and stamp duties and transactional costs and finance costs. They say, what did you buy it for? This, what did you spend on it in terms of build cost? This, but there's so much more to a development than just the purchase price and what the build costs are. There's utilities and warranty providers and sales costs and all these other things that they don't account for. What I found really interesting actually about the figures in Emmanuel's financial breakdown is that he clearly delivered these in a rising market. His GDV when he set out for that first project is 4.15 million. He actually sold all of the units for 4.421 million. So he actually made an extra 300 grand, which is like 8% of, on top of what he planned for. But because the professional fees and the finance costs and the design costs, took so long, that's the thing that wiped out all of his profit. And it's, time is money, and it's never more true in a property development project. You have to be on your program, on your timelines, because the moment it starts to stretch out, you're just holding huge amounts of finance costs and eating and eroding your profit margin. One other thing that you touched on, Jack, there is the misconception that because you've got planning approval in place, you can crack straight on and build what's been approved. The amount of times I've seen something be approved and just not be buildable. I'd probably go as far to say that 30% of planning approvals that get approved have to be reworked once you get into the detail, because floor build-ups aren't accurate, roof build-ups aren't accurate, the levels don't actually make sense. We've got a project in AURA at the moment that we took on after planning. It's actually the one that we're working with Horde and Alex Hearn on. And the previous architects, I mean, I feel like they tried to fudge it to make it work to get the planning approval through. And now they're like, somebody else can deal with the detailed design. We've done our bit. And now we're having to shift things, move things around, redesign things, actually make it work properly. And we're going to have to go back in to amend the planning to account for all of the differences that we've had to make to actually make it a buildable scheme. So just because it's got planning approval doesn't mean to say that you can build it straight away. You should definitely get some early advice in terms of the buildability side of things and whether or not it's actually accurate. And that comes back to getting a decent survey from day one. But yeah, some really good points there. Cool. Tuesday, AURA and I guess it was actually set up originally for AURA to do what's called a retrospective. So we do this about, I'd say like once or twice a year, but it's typically always been an internal business retrospective. And for those that haven't done one of those before, effectively it's a review. You know, how has the performance been in it? So kind of nobody's going to get shouted at for saying bad things about what's happened, or you come with a completely open book. Everyone's there to learn. You don't point fingers and play the blame game. It's just, look, we understand these things have happened. They're not great. What can we do to make them better? And it's not about looking at all the bad things. It's okay, what has gone well this year? What's gone well this year? What's gone badly this year? What are the opportunities to improve, and what can we put in place to make those improvements as we go along? And yeah, the retrospective this time around was meant to be, okay, XP's projects, we're working with XP a lot now. How have the previous projects gone? Which ones have been have gone well? Which ones haven't gone well? And Tom from XP Property came and sat in on that as well. So actually we had myself, who wears both hats, but also Tom, who isn't any part of AURA, was then also to give some open and honest feedback about the process and working between developer and architect. And it highlighted some really, really good things where there were frustrations on both sides, and actually having that open and honest conversation, it turns out like a lot of the stuff that we'd want to do from XP perspective was actually also good from an AURA perspective. So why aren't we doing it and putting things in place to have more process, have more systems? One of the things that we're going to be doing as XP Property is creating a manual. I guess you could call it a standard operating procedure. You could call it a design brief. You could call it whatever you want. But from an architectural perspective, whether we're using AURA or another architect, how good would it be if XP Property had a little booklet of golden rules? This is how we really want our bathroom set out, our kitchen set out. My golden rule for not getting your hand wet whilst you turn on the shower. So the valves need to be on one side and the shower head needs to be on the other, blah, blah, blah. All those sorts of key things. Even on site today, I was discussing where our TV sockets are going to go and what type of, do we have a double socket at high level, a double socket at low level, have a brush plate so that you can take your HDMI cable from the low level to the high TV that's wall mounted. All of these things, if XP Property had a standardized way that we expect things to be done, it's just a great starting point for any developer to take that handbook and run with it. And I would kind of implore any developers out there to just do that. If you like things done in a certain way, note them down, put them in a booklet or a PDF. And share them with all of your design team, because I guarantee it will save you money in the long run, and it will save the back and forth in time that you would otherwise not have got. So, yeah, it was a good conversation. Our relationship between AURA and XP Property internally is going to be way better going forward. Retrospectives, they're great. Cool. And if you're listening on the podcast, thank you very much. Please do rate us and review us on Apple Music. We would love to get projected out to the wider property industry and the business. Anyone with an SME business, we like to think there's lots of value from these podcasts for business owners and property people. So do rate us and review. Thanks if you're tuning in on YouTube, but do also check out the podcast, follow and subscribe and do all that good stuff. On to the 3 must-dos when setting up a business.
Yeah, the trifecta of where Ben and I got caught with our trousers down, which was the analogy that I said earlier. So in our boardroom, we actually fortunately had a new member who is sort of very early on their journey, actually experiencing construction and design before, so very relevant for joining the boardroom, but wants to work on their own projects. So this came up. It's very early days. If you're setting up a business, there's 3 things that you should be thinking about. The first thing that people always think about is the name and the branding. Great, get that done. That's the exciting part. But before you go down the branding route, I would highly recommend you check these 3 checklists that are very simple, but as effective as you need them to be before you spend loads of money on a designer to pull together the whole branding package and everything as such, and brand guidelines, brand colors and logos and all of those sorts of things. So Companies House. So Companies House is where companies are registered, and essentially if the name is already taken, then you don't really want to be duplicating the name. And the reason that that is the case is because if a company has already been registered under that name and it's still active, is they may have one of the other 2 that I'm about to come on to. And also you want to be unique. You want to be a unique organization. So that is number 1. A little top tip is you might be able to ask ChatGPT what names are available, because that might help you save you trawling around on Companies House. The second one that I would look at is domain. So whether that's 123 Reg or GoDaddy or whatever it may be, buying your domain of your name once you've checked on Companies House is obviously another biggie. You don't really want to have a crusty domain name with hyphens, // .net.org.uk .something else. And I have seen some interesting ones, like .worldwide. You want to look legitimate and you want to look real, and I would recommend you start with .com or .co.uk. Failing those 2, I don't think they look that good, if I'm really honest. So checking the domain is available. Then when you've gone, yep, bang, tick for Companies House, tick for the domain, then look at trademark or a registered trademark, which is a government website, and you can actually search for UK and worldwide trademarks within the industry that you operate in. It's quite a simple search, and you can just sort of do a like word matchups. And I would highly recommend that, because if you do want to take your business bigger than maybe the 4 walls of your spare room, and you want to be a high street or even a national business, it is relevant to make sure that you're not competing with people with their trademarking. And where Ben and I, actually came up against this is we originally had a different business name. We decided to rebrand because of a potential clash that could have come up in the future. Wasn't necessarily currently an issue, but could have been an issue. And we wanted our scalability to not be compromised. So we decided to make the change then, trademark all of our businesses, and that is how we did it. If you can see on the screen, you can see the 3 links that you can go on to search those 3. So www.gov.uk/government/organizations/company -house. And then 123 Reg, just Google 123 Reg or GoDaddy. And then the government website for trademarks is actually www.gov.uk/search-for-trademark.
Nice.
Oh, I feel like a news presenter.
The trifecta. I love it. I think it's too easy when you when you're first looking to set up a company to use something like your name and something else. And we spoke about our favorite books, I think, a couple of weeks ago, and one is Built to Sell, and the mantra should always be to build a business as if you were selling it at some point. I think when it's your name, above the door, it's your name plus a service, Ben Richards Plumbing, whatever. There's not much saleability to that. Nobody else.
That would be a terrible fucking outfit.
It would, yeah. I'm not very handsy. I'm better at computer desk. It's something I think is overlooked, and people don't think long term enough, and don't set up their business for growth and scale from day one. They just take it one step at a time, and I think sometimes you got to have a bit of vision and a bit of optimism in what you're doing with the business, and set things up as if it was much bigger than what it is. And if it grows bigger, great, you've got the setup. But if you start small and want to grow bigger, you're just going to have growing pains and a lot of issues that come further along the line.
Lovely.
Cool. Yeah, I had a fun day out yesterday, and we've done a couple of exhibitions for sort of property investment thing. It's hardcore, like standing on stands and talking to people all day. But even walking around this as an exhibit, as a visitor yesterday, my legs were killing and the back was hurting, and that just might be a case of old age. But we went to the Geo-business, the geospatial event. So it's Digital Construction Week at the moment, and geospatial technology is all about geographical technology, looking at satellites, surveys, drones, all of this stuff that's relevant to scanning, the world, the earth that we live in, basically. So some really, really interesting tech on show. I mean, I was first drawn as soon as I got into the door. There was a company that basically have satellite high definition satellite data of basically all of the UK, whereby they can track movement in terms of ground movement to the millimeter via satellite. So basically what they showed me this screen where they were doing a big development in central London. All of the properties around it were like 40-50 million pound properties in Mayfair and whatnot. And they had red dots all around the construction site where one house had actually dropped 5 millimeters, another dropped 15 millimeters, and it was like a heat map of basically movement. And this satellite is picking up all of that data. And they do a pass every 5 to 6 days. So they've got 10 years worth of data of all the ground movement in London and surrounding areas. So if you're doing some party wall stuff or big construction, and you've got, they work with a lot of insurers to, basically for insurance claims about subsidence and ground movement and things like that. And this data is actually available for £200 a year. Like I was blown away at how cheap it was, and was trying to think of a use case in XP surveys as to when we can use these things. But going to these events, I wouldn't have even known that was a thing if I didn't go to this event and start speaking to people. I think if you're in an industry, you should really go to these types of things to understand what your competitors are doing, understand what's out there in the market in terms of new technologies, new innovations. They had some amazing speakers and some lectures and presentations about the way that the industry is moving in terms of AI and things like that. And it was just, it was a great day out. It was myself and 3 of our other surveyors who had a walk around talking to various people, getting business cards, starting to open conversations about doing business together, and, suppliers that supply us with our survey kit and all that sort of stuff. So and I learned some new skills on Bluebeam, which I'm looking forward to putting into practice. If you've been listening to our podcast, Bluebeam is a PDF editing software that I absolutely live by and swear by. I did tell them I was pissed off that they've gone to a yearly subscription model rather than a perpetual license, but that's by the by. But it was a great event. I think you should always try and attend these types of things if you want to stay ahead of the curve and grow your business faster than other people, and get you ahead of the game. Cool. Oh, you're on mute, I think, Jack.
Yeah, I was just going to say, just to touch on that, if you're not learning and enhancing your products and your services and being on the cutting edge of technology, you're actually moving backwards. You're not stationary, you're moving backwards. And there is surveying businesses that wouldn't be upskilling and learning and attending these events. So, not only is it to stay in the market, to progress on and have a USP, it's just to stay in the market, in my opinion. And I mean, some of the stuff that I was chatting to the surveyors today that they are bringing out is completely superseding and 1,000xing the current services and speed that we can do things at. So watch this space. Obviously, XP surveys have always focused on using as much tech in everything that we can, and that's not just our surveying kit. That's also our online quotation tool, which is completely free to any users if anyone wants to use it to get a quote for your measured surveys. But shame I missed it, but busy catching up.
It was good. I'm keen to go every year, I think, just to see what's out there, because in this industry and with technology, the growth is exponential now. We'll see things next year that I think I'll also be blown away with, and can't really understand how how we're doing things, so much faster, so much more efficiently, and using technology. And it's in our industry, we need to keep our finger on the pulse for sure. Cool. As always, please do ask any questions. If you've got any business issues that you're really struggling with, we want to help with that. This is what this platform is for. So if you've got any questions about some things you're stuck with, please do drop them in the comments. We will come back and revisit all of those comments and bring them up next episode to answer them and have a discussion about them. But I think that's from this week all for now, really. Jack, anything else you wanted to finish on?
Nothing from me. Hope everyone has a lovely weekend.
Yep, likewise.
See you next week.
Catch you next Friday, 5 p.m.